The roar of the crowd echoed through the arena like waves against a restless shore. In the center of it all stood a young athlete, barely in his 20s, holding the gold medal that had taken years of sweat and sacrifice to earn. His name filled the air in chants, each cheer carrying both celebration and expectation. On his face, there was pride, yes, but it was softened by something deeper, an awareness of how fragile this moment really was. As the lights flashed and reporters crowded closer, his mind drifted away from the noise. He remembered early mornings when the sky was still painted in gray, when his breath turned to frost as he trained in the cold. He remembered the taste of failure, the sting of defeat, the moments when his body ached so much he thought he couldn't continue. Yet what returned most vividly were the people who stood by him in those moments. His parents, who drove him to practices when he was too young to drive himself. His teammates, who cheered him on even when they were chasing the same dream. And his first coach, whose voice had been steady as stone, reminding him that talent may win you a match, but character decides if you win at life. Now, as the medal weighed heavy against his chest, it felt less like his and more like a collection of all those sacrifices bound together. He looked into the crowd, catching the faces of his teammates and coaches. Their eyes weren't filled with envy, but with pride. They knew how much of themselves lived inside his victory. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the noise fade. For all the glory that shimmered around him, there was also a quiet truth. Winning was only part of the story. What mattered more was how he carried this victory, how he honored the journey that had brought him here. When he finally raised his hand to wave, it wasn't just for himself. It was for everyone who had given a piece of their lives to shape his own. The crowd cheered louder, yet within his heart, a softer voice whispered the reminder he needed most. Success is fleeting, but gratitude endures. The days that followed were unlike anything he had ever experienced. Cameras flashed everywhere he went, and interviewers lined up to ask how it felt to be the nation's newest champion. Strangers stopped him on the street, pointing, smiling, eager to take photos with him. The victory had given him more than a medal, it had made him a symbol. Yet, with that sudden spotlight, came a weight he hadn't expected. At first, the attention felt exhilarating. The applause, the headlines, the endless praise, it was intoxicating. But soon, he began to sense the subtle shift beneath it all. Some voices whispered that he was destined for greatness beyond anyone else, that he was untouchable now, above the very people who once trained beside him. And somewhere inside, he felt the faint stir of pride, like a fire that could so easily burn out of control if he let it grow unchecked. One evening, after yet another interview where the host showered him with compliments, he sat alone in his room, the medal lying on the desk beside him. Its golden surface gleamed under the lamplight, but to him, it seemed almost accusing. Was this what success meant? To be worshipped as though he had done it all alone? He thought of his teammates, those who still pushed through their own struggles, some of them training harder than ever, but never receiving the same recognition. His thoughts returned to his first coach, the one who had guided him from a boy with raw ambition into the disciplined athlete he had become. The coach's words replayed in his mind, steady and unshakable. Victory is never yours alone. It belongs to all who helped you climb. Forget that, and you lose more than you win. The temptation of pride lingered, but so did the memory of that voice. He knew arrogance could destroy everything he stood for: relationships, respect, and even his own peace. Success without humility, he realized, was like holding a cup with a crack. No matter how much was poured in, it would always leak empty. So, he made a quiet decision. His success would not turn into a wall that separated him from others. Instead, it would be a bridge, connecting him back to those who had built him up. He would carry his coach's lesson with him into every moment that followed. And in that decision, the gold medal on his desk finally seemed to shine in a different way. It no longer looked like a prize for one man, but a symbol of shared triumph, one he would never claim as his alone. The next time he stood before a crowd, it wasn't just reporters waiting for a soundbite or fans craving a picture. It was his team, his coaches, and the people who had walked beside him through years of struggle. The championship celebration had gathered everyone into one place, and as the spotlight turned to him, the moment came to speak. He held the microphone, and for a heartbeat, silence stretched across the room. His gold medal caught the light, gleaming proudly against his chest. But instead of basking in the glory of his own name, he began to call out the names of others. One by one, he thanked every coach who had pushed him when he wanted to quit, every teammate who had challenged him in practice, every friend who had believed in him when victories seemed distant. He didn't speak with the tone of a champion towering above others. He spoke with the softness of someone who knew he was only standing there because others had lifted him up along the way. Some in the crowd had expected a speech about his hard work, his sacrifice, his willpower. Instead, they heard a story about shared resilience and collective strength. The more he spoke, the more faces lit up with quiet joy. Tears shimmered in the eyes of teammates who had never heard their names spoken on a stage so grand. Coaches nodded, their pride not in the medal but in the man he had become. In that moment, his victory transformed. It no longer belonged to him. It belonged to everyone who had carried a piece of the journey. And that act of humility, acknowledging others instead of himself, became the reason people respected him far more than any medal ever could. Long after the championship faded into history, people remembered the way he carried himself. They remembered the young athlete who, at the height of his triumph, chose gratitude over pride. His humility outlasted the noise of applause, teaching everyone around him that true success is not in the winning, but in staying grounded after victory. The medal would eventually lose its shine, as all trophies do, but the respect he earned, the bonds he deepened, and the lesson he left behind would remain unbroken. His story became less about sports and more about life itself. Success is sweetest when it's shared, and the heart that stays humble shines brighter than gold. True success is never measured by the weight of a medal or the size of the applause. It is found in the quiet strength of humility, in the ability to remember where you came from and who stood beside you along the way. This young athlete's journey reminds us that victories fade, but the way we treat others becomes our true legacy. Perhaps the next time we achieve something great, we too can ask ourselves not just what we gained, but who we lifted with us. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe more people should hear stories of strength, gratitude, and humility, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more heartfelt tales.